Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. Today we're starting off here at Enderville and we're going to bid Enderville a fond farewell in a minute because I want to head back to the overworld and do some stuff. But I wanted to spend this episode looking into a problem that I've been having here as we've been putting this community together. As you can see, there are a few iron golems around. They are not the problem. They are doing a good job of protecting this place. Not that there's really anything to protect it from quite yet. Hopefully we'll end up using them a little bit more in the pillager raids when we end up doing one here in the end. But the thing is, there are things that they cannot protect this village from, and that includes the Endermen. Endermen and Iron Golems don't seem to tangle from what I've seen. They don't tend to fight each other. I guess that makes sense with Endermen mostly being passive or at least neutral unless the player aggroes them. They don't really mess with villagers all that much. You don't tend to worry too much about them while they're around here. Oh, and by the way, I've been building a couple of the houses that I wanted to build in the style of the End City, but with village materials. And I really like these oak and dark oak renditions of the End City kind of modules. I wasn't going to do the full tower or anything, but I like the idea of actually having village houses in here. And so I've got some workstations. A few of them seem to have migrated over to find the beds already, and it looks like they are settling in nicely. I still need to do a bit of decoration, maybe put some beds on the upstairs floors, but villagers don't do well with, like, height in builds. They tend to explore a little bit, but they don't tend to pathfind to beds very easily if they are above other beds, so that's something I'll have to work out. But I have been building the landscape up around here, and as you can see, we've got some nice rolling green hills, and I'm starting to put in a few of the village houses on this side as well. And this is where I've encountered my problem, because there's a lot of dirt, a lot of grass going into this build, and naturally, with Enderman being the only thing that is around here, those are blocks that Endermen like to pick up. In the overworld, you'll find them doing it occasionally, but it doesn't really make such a big dent in the landscape. It happens less frequently than it used to, I believe, but Endermen will still pick up blocks. Normally, if they don't despawn, they will put them down again, but if they despawn, there's a chance that potentially that block could be lost. And over time, especially if we are building a large custom landscape in the end, and there are no other blocks that they can pick up, they don't pick up and move around endstone. It's usually just dirt, grass, gravel, sand, that kind of stuff. I think occasionally they can pick up blocks of TNT, which is a little bit scary, but I'm not building with any of that around here. But in theory, the Enderman could pick away at this landscape until it was completely rearranged in a long enough amount of time. Like, look over there, for example. That block of dirt is not connected to anything, and I've been placing all of this dirt in a connected kind of section, so I wouldn't have placed this dirt block here, which means that has happened because of an Enderman. And so today, inspired by this problem, I want to talk a little bit about mob griefing and the solutions for it. We spent yesterday talking about the mechanic of time. Today we're going to talk about the mechanic of mob griefing and why the solutions to it aren't quite as simple as they might at first appear. Because there is a simple game rule for disabling mob griefing, and let me go a little bit into a definition of what exactly mob griefing is. Mob griefing is any mob in the game. Passive, neutral, hostile, whatever, utility mobs even, any mobs in the game destroying or moving blocks, either that have been placed by the player or that have been naturally generated as part of the terrain. And there is a game rule to disable this. So if we type /game rule, like so, we go to mob griefing, autofill that, and if you set that to false, that will disable mob griefing, which means Endermen won't be able to pick up blocks. Creepers, when they explode, will still damage the player but won't damage any of the environment, and Ghast fireballs won't blow stuff up. In theory, disabling mob griefing by setting it to false could be a very good thing for us, especially when it comes to the preservation of the terrain around here, because that completely disables the... oh, I've made that guy angry. That completely disables the behaviour of Endermen picking up these blocks from around here. However, there are some downsides to it, which I will explain to you once I've killed this guy, because he's gonna be a problem otherwise. There we go, and a couple of extra ender pearls as well. So the problem with disabling mob griefing is that it can also disable some of the more positive things about mob griefing, which includes villagers farming. If you disable mob griefing, villagers will not touch crops. It will make automatic crop farming impossible because villagers won't be able to break the crops that are planted here. It can make some forms of automatic breeding impossible, although there are workarounds for that. If you imagine a breeder like the one that I made in the early stages of this series, that relied on farmers being able to constantly farm crops and throw them to the other villagers in the breeding cell, and that is not possible if mob griefing is disabled. So we want a more elegant solution to this, and one that doesn't require us to just attack any Endermen that turn up here trying to steal my grass. So for the sake of doing this on camera, I'm going to type game rule mob griefing, and I'm going to set it back to true, allowing stuff to actually grief the terrain again, which feels like a weird move, but in the long run, this is going to be okay. Now let's head back to the overworld, and we're going to talk more about how we can avoid mob griefing in a different way. Now, in terms of combating ghasts or creepers, the most common thing that we do to avoid mob griefing as survival players is either to fight back or to run away. And it's simple enough with creepers. They don't explode unless you get within a certain distance of them, so avoiding them is usually a decent strategy, especially if you are out in the middle of nowhere and there are a lot of creepers around. You probably want to spend your time running from them instead of fighting all of them individually. They'll spawn infinitely at night if an area isn't properly lit up, so chances are you'll encounter a fair share of creepers and one of them has a chance to blow up. Alternatively, fight back, because if you've got a decent bow and a sword, you're careful enough or quick enough, you will be able to take out the creeper without it exploding at all, and that means gunpowder for you, which means you can do a whole bunch of other stuff with that. In the case of ghasts, running away can be a little bit of a trickier proposition because a lot of the time you're running away from something that is fireballing you from range, and therefore the destructive potential that you leave in your wake is quite something. Now, of course, dealing with ghasts is a little bit different because ghasts are fireballing you from range, and the explosive potential those fireballs have, while I don't think it's quite equivalent to the explosion from a creeper, can still be devastating to the terrain around here. But of course, you're not necessarily going to want to build a bunch of stuff with netherrack. It might just be for the purposes of getting back to your nether hub or something like that. And in the case of a nether hub, it is wise to build smart, using materials that cannot be exploded by ghasts. Anything with the blast resistance of stone or similar will probably be a safe bet. A lot of people build their early nether hubs out of cobblestone just so they can make sure that stuff is blast resistant and perfectly safe. Smooth stone is a good alternative, as is basically anything with a high enough blast resistance. And if you want to know what the blast resistance of something is, I recommend checking out the Minecraft wiki, because basically every block is detailed on there with information about whether or not it is blast resistant. But if you want to avoid the general destruction of the terrain, or you're working with blocks that are a little bit more fragile in the nether, if you're doing a terraforming project and you're bringing grass in here like we're doing with the end right now, you might want to consider just taking out ghasts as you see them. Get better with a bow, get up there with a sword and some elytra, and give them the chop, because that will save you a little bit of hassle in the long run. Remember that the nether is going to try and spawn a few more ghasts in if you kill one of them, so bear in mind that you will find ghasts spawning in a kind of cyclic way, and if you end up hanging around some chunks for a while, you might find them spawning sort of continuously. So breaking their line of sight, getting behind some defenses, is often the safest bet if you're working in the nether for prolonged periods of time. So with ghasts and creepers, the damage is mostly avoidable, but it's with Endermen, once again, that we find a bit of a problem, because Endermen operate kind of quietly. They don't tend to mess with you unless you mess with them. And so you can find them teleporting into an area, taking a grass block, and then disappearing with it before you really know what's happened. They're also kind of a pain to fight. They hit hard, and if you're not all that keen on fighting stuff, you might find them a little bit of a challenge to take on. So how can we avoid them griefing stuff and removing blocks from the landscape without disabling the ability for villagers to interact with terrain, or even disabling the ability for creepers and ghasts to be a concern if you want to participate in that aspect of gameplay? If you like the challenge of maybe getting your stuff blown up by a creeper every now and again, but you just want the option to avoid some of the stuff that you otherwise can't avoid, like Enderman griefing. Well, thankfully, players have come up with a lot of different solutions to this over the years, and that used to be done with command blocks. Command blocks are something that I mentioned touching on at some point in this series, and it's not something I'm going to cover in huge detail here because it very quickly gets outside of what survival Minecraft is. These things can get incredibly complex, incredibly creative, and are used to create a lot of mini-games and stuff, but for the purposes of this, we are not going to use them a great deal. I can give myself one of these, but I can't even place it while I'm in survival mode. That's probably a good indication of exactly how survival these things are. But if I go into creative mode here, yes, I'm in creative mode, I'm going to pop this down, and it's also worth noting that this possibility isn't even available to you unless you're playing in a world that has cheats enabled, or you have admin privileges on a multiplayer server. But for a while, command blocks were the way that players stopped Endermen from messing around with the landscape in their world without having to worry about disabling the rest of mob griefing. And the command required is a little bit more complex, so I'm not actually going to reproduce it here because it's not the current method for dealing with this. But basically, what used to happen was that as soon as an Enderman would spawn in, it would be given an invisible block. Now, if you think back to the episode where we got onto the roof of the Nether and broke bedrock, you'll remember that at a certain point in that, I was using some pistons, and the piston head became invisible as part of the shenanigans we were doing there. Now, I'm pretty sure the way it used to work, and I'm not a technical player typically, so I don't tend to go into this stuff all that much, but from what I understand, the way that people used to prevent Endermen from griefing was by giving them a block that was an invisible piston head automatically whenever they spawned in anywhere in the world. So you'd have a command block that was constantly ticking over, constantly looking for Endermen, and giving them this block that was effectively invisible to the player. It was also a block that had some really weird properties. Because it was part of a piston, they couldn't put it down anywhere. They couldn't just place it in the world, which meant they were constantly holding something. And it looked a little bit weird with Endermen running around, constantly looking like they were holding something invisible out in front of them, but it meant they didn't mess with the grass or dirt or gravel or whatever it was you were placing in your world without affecting mechanics like mob griefing from creepers and, more importantly, crop farming by villagers. So that's the way people used to do it, but that was before the advent of data packs, which we're going to be looking at today, and we're not going to even need a command block for these. We're actually going to just install something in our Minecraft saves folder. And for that, we will need to go out to a website that's been set up by Azuma, who you might know as somebody from Hermitcraft, and he's a very, very good Minecrafter in his own right. He has a website full of data packs and resource packs and interesting tweaks to crafting recipes that you can add to your game if you want to add a little bit of a different twist on the vanilla game. And while we're not going to look into those too heavily, because I'm very interested in keeping this a vanilla survival experience, I also want to touch on data packs a little bit in this episode because it's quite a common thing to have on multiplayer servers or in worlds where you really don't want the Enderman to mess with you. And before we head out to that website, I'm going to bop this command block out of existence, I'm going to delete it from my inventory, and I'm going to go back into survival mode so that you guys know I am back. I'm not going to be doing anything else in creative. Just to show you that command blocks are out there, it is possible to solve this problem with them, but right now, it's not the best way of doing it. The best way of doing it is to go here. This is vanillatweaks.net, which you can also get to from Azuma's website, azumavoid.com. Links to both of these will be in the description, and here we can choose between resource packs, data packs, and crafting tweaks. So resource packs are going to be like the things we've shown you before, stuff like texture packs and sounds and models and that kind of thing. So that's some interesting stuff you can look into if you want to. Crafting tweaks is going to change a few crafting recipes, especially if you want stuff like renewable coral blocks, things like that which aren't in the game already. But data packs is what we're going to focus on here, and only the anti-griefing data packs to begin with. So let's click on data packs here, and we will be given a bunch of options. Now, there are a huge amount of things here that will change the behavior of some of the stuff in the world. It will change the drops that some mobs give you. For example, on multiplayer servers where shulker boxes might be a hot commodity, but end cities are very rare, you can download a data pack that makes all of the shulkers in the world drop 2 shulker shells every time they are killed, instead of only having a chance to dropping 1, which is the default in vanilla. Likewise, if end cities with boats are quite rare, you can have a data pack that allows the Ender Dragon to drop both an elytra and a dragon egg, so players all get the trophy item for killing the dragon, and they also get elytra, so they don't have to worry about going out into the end cities and exploring where some players may already have explored. I haven't installed any data packs into the Minecraft Survival Guide world so far, and I don't really plan to, aside from this anti-Enderman griefing thing, which I'm only really doing for the purposes of explaining it to you in this video now that I've covered the ability to remodel the end and do some fun terraforming stuff out there. So as you can see up here, we have 3 anti-griefing data packs. We have one that prevents creepers from blowing up blocks, we have one that prevents ghasts from blowing up blocks, and we have one that prevents Endermen from picking them up and moving them around or potentially vanishing with them. And there are links to videos by Azuma which will explain how each of these works if you want to know about it in a little bit more detail. But for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to hit download. And that's going to download it to a zip file, saving on my computer's hard drive, which I'm going to unpack and move into the data packs folder in my Minecraft saves folder. So here we are, I've gone to my downloads folder, I've found the zip file I just downloaded, I'm going to open that up, and inside you will see this file here, Anti-Enderman Griefing version 1.0.0. They really perfected it first try on this one, didn't they? And over here, I've got my Minecraft folder in the app data folder. It's on the application support folder if you're on a Mac. And if you go into the saves folder here, right here you can see survival guide. That is my current world, the world that I am playing on. I'm going to open that up, and inside here you will see a folder called data packs. I'm going to open that up, and as you can see right now, it's got nothing in here. What we're going to do is move this zip folder, the Anti-Enderman Grief zip folder, over into this data packs folder. And that is all you need to do. That is literally it to install this, except when we load the world up, I might just quickly go over the commands for reloading all of the data packs just to make sure that everything is refreshed and the Endermen are acting the way they should. Once again, we're going to link this website in the description if you want to find it there, and we are going to cover data packs in a little bit more detail in future. As I said, they're not something I plan to add extensively into the Minecraft Survival Guide world, as I'm really focused on the vanilla experience that anybody else can have. But it's interesting to know what is possible out here. And by the way, if you're playing on Minecraft Bedrock Edition, these are all for the Minecraft Java Edition, but there are things called behaviour packs, which should also be able to do the same thing. Unfortunately, I don't know the source for any of those. I don't know exactly where you can find data packs that might prevent Endermen from griefing your world, but I think it is still possible to kind of alter their behavior to work the same way. I'm sure folks in the comments will let me know, and if it isn't possible right now, I expect it will be soon, because the Bedrock Edition of Minecraft is making strides in terms of how it can be customized by the player, and so hopefully that kind of stuff will be available soon if it's not already. Alright, so we're going to go back to the Minecraft Survival Guide world. I'm going to make sure this data pack has been installed correctly, and then we're going to take a look at its effects. Okay, welcome back, and this is perfect. We actually have an Enderman down here. And as you can see, he is not holding anything, or he doesn't look like he's holding it at least, but I'm fairly certain that if he were to try and pick up a grass block around here, he couldn't. In fact, he's not even going to try, because what this data pack does is it changes Enderman's behavior to only want to pick up very specific blocks. In fact, it wants them to pick up blocks that aren't even available in survival mode, and that is structure blocks. Azuma goes into a little bit more detail in the video where he explains how this pack works, but basically it's looking for a block that is only really available if you spawn it in using commands. So typically, survival world players aren't going to have much of them placed in their world, and that means that if that's the only block the Enderman is looking for, it won't be able to pick anything up. It won't think about picking up grass blocks, or gravel, or sand, or netherrack, or anything like that. It is just going to search for and never find the types of blocks it wants to pick up. And that is perfect, because it means the Endermen don't look really weird like they're holding something invisible. It means they don't mess with the terrain so that we can continue to build in the end, and so forth. Now, because my single-player world has loaded itself up from scratch every time I restart the world, I don't have to worry too much about how to install the data pack. It's basically already happened. However, if you're on a multiplayer server that is constantly running, and you add data packs into the world, you might want to take a note of the command /reload, which basically, if you hit that, it will say reloading, and that reloads all of the data packs that you've installed in your world, including any that have just been freshly installed. So that's how you will end up reloading the data packs if you've added something new. And you can also restart the server, and that will load all of the data packs when it runs through the process of loading your server up. But that's really it. And from this point on, we won't have to deal with Enderman griefing anymore. So that guy is never going to be picking up another grass block again. And personally, having been building in the end, I'm very, very happy about that. So this was another shorter video, but it was a brief look at data packs and exactly how we can use them to our advantage in a way that doesn't really alter survival gameplay too much. We don't want to worry too much about the Enderman griefing all of the landscapes that we're building in the end. So I'm a lot happier now that that data pack has been installed. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at data packs and stopping mob griefing. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on the episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.